Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to go ahead and call to order this meeting of the Santa Barbara County Local Agency Formation Commission, first one of our new year on January 7th, 2016. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Aceves?
Here.
Commissioner Farr?
Here.
Commissioner Fox?
Here.
Commissioner Geyer?
Here.
Commissioner Lavanino?
Here.
Commissioner Morehouse?
Here.
Commissioner Orek?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson? Here. Commissioner Stark?
Here.
Commissioner Welts?
Here.
Commissioner Wolf?
Here. Thank you. Would you please stand with me to recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our next item of business is the approval of the minutes of our December 10th, 2015 meeting. If there are no corrections or changes, can I have a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Aceves, a second by Commissioner Orek. We will need to have a roll call vote because Commissioner Welt is in Santa Maria.
Commissioner Aceves?
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Morehouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Orek?
Aye.
Commissioner Welts?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Farr?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, and now we're going to select a new chair and vice chair of Santa Barbara LAFCO for the coming year, for the next 12 months. And so I will open the floor here for motions. Commissioner Orek?
Yes, Madam Chair. I know I'm in the pecking order to be the assistant chair, but I would relinquish that duties to my colleague from Goleta in lieu of me taking on that position because he needs the training, I think. So so I'll go ahead and make a motion, if I might, to appoint Greg Geyer as the chair and then the vice chair, Roger Aceves.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Orek, a second by Commissioner Morehouse to elect our new chair as Commissioner Geyer and our vice chair as Commissioner Aceves. We'll have a roll call.
Commissioner Aceves?
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer? Aye. Commissioner Morehouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Orek?
Aye.
Commissioner Welts?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Farr?
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right, Commissioner Geyer, I think that we need to switch seats now. Congratulations, congratulations. Commissioner Aceves, I know we're in for a great year.
It was a landslide. First, turn on your microphone.
Wow, all right. Okay. The next item on the agenda then is public comment. Do we have any speakers?
Chair Geyer and members of the commission, we have no requests to speak on general public comment.
Okay. The next item is the consent calendar. Do you want to read that into the record or? Okay. Is there any requests to change it? If not, motion to pass the consent calendar as presented.
I'd like to pull the first item.
Okay. I think that's the only thing on there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, not the disbursements, it's something else.
Chair Geyer and members of the commission, consent calendar item number 2 is Summit View Homes reorganization, LAFCO file 14-1, continue from the December 10, 2015 meeting. Consider approval of proposal involving annexation to the City of Lompoc and the Mission Hills Community Service District and detachment from County Service Area 32, the Santa Barbara County Fire Protection District, and the Mosquito and Vector Management District of the Santa Barbara County, and associated sphere of influence revisions.
Okay, so you want to pull that for discussion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we have that discussion then right after the consent for the disbursements?
I move approval of the disbursements.
Okay, second. Okay. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Aceves?
Aye.
Commissioner Farr? Commissioner Morehouse? Commissioner Orrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Welts?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Guyer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so then we'll move on to the first item for business, and we'll sum of you reorganization.
Perhaps we can go to staff first. I know there's more stuff that was put in the report that we requested. And I did request that we place it on the consent calendar, but after looking at the additional information, it caused me to have some questions. So before I ask them, perhaps Mr. Hood can fill us in on what additional information was put in, should we have additional.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the chair, Commissioner Aceves, you requested a final map and legal description, which we have received, and we have a depiction in the staff report. But the county surveyor has worked with the applicant's civil engineer, and we have a completed map and legal description that's been stamped and certified. The Mission Hill CSD agreement to serve, as well as the can and will serve letter, and the physical analysis from the city of Lompoc, which is also included in the additional items that you requested last meeting in December.
Okay, the questions I have basically have to do with whether the plan for services in this annexation is adequate. In particular, the first question I would have regarding these plan for services is that on approval by this commission, the annexation would take effect when?
The annexation would take effect, there's a 30-day request for reconsideration period, so somewhere around February 7th or beyond the end of that week. Then your staff would file a certificate of completion with the county recorder's office, and upon being stamped by the recorder's office, the annexation reorganization, that is, would become effective. So
Okay.
sometime middle of February.
So the middle of February, the city of Lompoc would assume all responsibility for this property, except for the water and wastewater.
That's correct.
That includes police services, fire services, public works, et cetera.
That's correct. And bear in mind that the property is vacant right now, so at some point there would be a phased development of residential units constructed on the site. And at that point, yeah.
And that leads to my second question, is that it is vacant. However, the financial report that the city of Lompoc prepared talks about current and then build out. And then all the financial agreements are based on build out, including a sharing of fire mitigation fees, taxation, but what services will the county be servicing or be providing after annexation that would justify those contributions?
Well, first of all, the fire mitigation fee would not take place until the units are constructed, because I believe it says 60 days following construction of the units there would be a transfer of fire mitigation fees. And the property tax exchange is, I think, what you're referring to. That would not take effect until the following tax year. So it would not become effective immediately upon the reorganization being proposed, because these matters lag by at least one fiscal year before there is any transfer of property tax money. So they would not be receiving little, if any, property tax money until there's construction on the site. And then there would be a transfer of tax money from the county and to the city that are specified in the property tax resolutions that were adopted by both the city of Lompoc and the county of Santa Barbara.
I guess my question really is, why isn't the agreement based on the current value of the property? And why is it based on future value considering build out? And I read through the financial report. I still don't understand it. They're going to be serviced by the City of Lompoc Fire Department. The county fire will be responding by mutual aid as they do everywhere else in the county. So why would they take a share of the fire mitigation fees?
Well, basically, I guess the quick answer is that was what the county and the city agreed to in the property tax exchange negotiations, which I'm sure you recall, this was on our agenda as a submitted application for about a year and a half. So they were extended negotiations between the county and the city, and there's some transfer of road maintenance responsibilities, as well as amending the map to include the adjacent roads. So in the property tax exchange discussions, there is room for this kind of negotiation. And to go back to the last meeting, this is not a precedent-setting resolution of property tax exchange. This is on a case-by-case basis. So it's not setting a precedent for any future reorganizations or changes of organizations involving cities.
That's easily said, but we don't know when the next one comes forward as to how those negotiations are going to come based on this one. I guess my final question goes to our legal counsel. Does this commission have say on this agreement regarding financials based on evaluating whether or not the services are adequate as presented?
Your jurisdiction is not to review the property tax exchange agreement. Your jurisdiction is to review the plan for services to see if it's adequate. So Lompoc has provided that. Part and parcel of that, I would think, is that they have a sufficient funding to carry out the plan. So whether they get that from tax proceeds they divvied up with the county, or whether they get that from other sources of revenue, that's for the city, I think, ultimately to decide. But you can certainly, ask for some assurances from the city that they can provide the services that they're proposing in their plan for services. That's a fair question.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Wolf?
Thank you. I just thank you, Mr. Hood, for responding as you did. And, as sitting as one of the supervisors during this whole process, although it is in Supervisor Farr's district, she may want to comment, but we had a lot of discussion about the tax exchange agreement and the services that may or may not be provided, or the assistance. There was particular focus on the fire department. So there was a lot of time that was spent between the parties in negotiating this agreement. So it definitely wasn't done hastily. It was done, I think, with mutual respect. As I recall, Supervisor Farr, there was a subcommittee from the Board of Supervisors to reach this agreement. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little perspective on how we got to where we are right now.
Okay, we have public comments on this?
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, we have 3 requests to speak on this item, and they are Stephen Hester, to be followed by Patrick Weimiller, and last Alan Seltzer.
None? Okay. Okay, with that, we'll close it. And is there a motion?
I'll move this item.
Okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Seves?
No.
Commissioner Farr? Commissioner Morehouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Orek?
Aye.
Commissioner Walt?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Guyer?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay, the next business item then is item number 1.
Chair Guyer and members of the commission, business item number 1 is to consider recommendations regarding updates of existing spheres of influence.
We'll just wait for the PowerPoint to load. Hopefully it's a little clearer than it was last meeting in Santa Maria. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer. This item is a confirmation of existing city municipal service reviews and spheres of influence. Sphere of influence review process is that the Commission is required to adopt a sphere of influence for each city and special district. The Commission's obligation is to review and approve existing spheres or update them as necessary on a 5-year rotational basis. December of last year, the Commission reaffirmed that process and directed staff to update existing spheres of influence as necessary. As part of this process, in late last year, the staff sent out copies of the existing MSRs and SOIs to all of the 8 cities, including maps of the spheres of influence of the cities in Santa Barbara County, and a cover letter that asked the cities to review the existing spheres of influence and determine if changes are warranted. Staff received responses from all 8 cities in the county regarding updates in their respective spheres of influence. And the 6 cities listed below in the staff report, and I'll show those on the screen in a minute, are requesting the Commission reaffirm their existing spheres of influence. The spheres were approved between 2009 and back 2010 and 11. The sphere of influence is exempt from CEQA because there's no changes in the existing spheres of influence. The cities of Buellton, Guadalupe, Lompoc, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and Solvang responded to the letters, and I met with several of the city's managers and planning staff. City of those cities, City of Carpinteria is requesting that 2 areas be deleted from their current sphere of influence, and the City of Goleta is going to present some possible recommendations from staff to consider a couple of additional areas to its sphere of influence. Carpinteria and Goleta spheres will be will be calendared for future Commission meetings. I think that the Carpinteria sphere, because they're deleting areas, would be exempt from CEQA. Goleta's sphere would depend on what they would be asking, if anything, to change as a result of the City Council discussion. So just in summary, I'm recommending the Commission accept public testimony, adopt the attached resolutions confirming spheres of influence for the 8 cities, Buellton, Guadalupe, or the 6 of the 8 cities, Buellton, Guadalupe, Lompoc, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and Solvang. And we'll be, after we get through with the cities, we'll be looking at the special districts for similar recommendations, reaffirming or asking for additional changes. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
I do have one question, or it's not a question, but anyway, a comment. Could you, for those of people that are here that are not on the Commission, kind of explain what a sphere of influence is, and that a city could have a sphere of influence larger than areas that aren't annexed into it?
Yes, very clearly. The sphere of influence, I included this in the staff report as a plan for the probable physical boundaries of service area of a city or special district. LAFCO has various guidelines in adopting spheres contained in the Cortese-Knox-Hertzberg Act, but really what a sphere of influence is a probable future annexation boundary for a city or special district. So we take into consideration, the Commission does, and staff makes recommendations on spheres based on existing land uses, land that's surrounding cities, special districts. We look at maintaining rational and reasonable growth, maintaining open space and agricultural land, directing development, residential, commercial, industrial development away from ag land and open space, and bearing in mind the city and the county general plan as far as land use determinations. For instance, if an area would be zoned in the county general plan for residential, commercial, or industrial development, it probably is already within the sphere of influence of a city or a special district. But for areas that are not included in those land use determinations, generally the existing sphere of influence is approved or reaffirmed. So did I answer your question?
Pretty much, yeah. So the sphere of influence of a city can wind up being larger than the actual area of the city.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and generally it is, or generally it's the existing city limits.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission?
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So based on the action that we just took on Summit View, the map that we have for Lompoc has to be amended to put that line around it now.
That's correct, and this came up last month, so it would include the Summit View Homes area within the sphere of influence. And in discussions with the city, that would be the only change. So, but based on your action today, that would be included in the SOI.
Commissioner Morehouse?
Okay, and then actually I do have another question. Maybe it's clear if you look at it online, but the maps that we got in our packet are pretty much not legible. So I'm just wondering, to kind of follow on what the chair was talking about, if you would pull up the city of Santa Barbara, and do you have a map? Do you have those maps?
Yes, we do. They're attached to the resolution. I didn't give them to the clerk.
Well, I'm just
has
wondering
them.
whether we can pull it up big so we can see it, because I think to get to the point of what is the difference between the incorporated city boundary and what is the sphere boundary, you know, it would be good to better understand that, I think, for the city of Santa Barbara, because we have, you know, issues that have come up about that. And also, I'm not clear even with the city of Santa Maria. I know that Tanglewood is not in the city, but I think it's within the sphere. But anyway, it would be good to be able to have a better visual representation of that.
Right, as I mentioned, they certainly can be different, the city limits and the sphere of influence. The sphere could be larger, or in some cases smaller. With Carpinteria as example.
Well, maybe while we're waiting for it to load, you might want to see if somebody else has other
Do you wanna
questions
ask
that
your
could be
question?
answered.
Do you want to ask your question?
Sure. I noticed on the map that is not very clear in our packet, but it looks like that the map drawings from the Carpinteria is from possibly 1987, which was the annexation of the Sandpiper Mobile Home Park. So is that how long we've had the map drawn incorrectly?
These are the latest maps that are on the county surveyor's website. They should be current. If there's been, depends on if there's any annexations between.
Well, I
then and
believe
now.
the city of Carpinteria's problem with the sphere was that it included the part of the city's, the cemetery.
Cemetery,
district.
half of the cemetery.
Yeah, which would have, that line would have been drawn when the Sandpiper was annexed back in 1987, so that's how long it's been incorrect. Is it?
That's a good question. I can follow up with that.
Okay, and then secondly, I guess the city of Goleta is going to be coming forward with including some more. So I was just wondering if that was, their sphere was going to be Isla Vista too?
I don't have a comment on that.
Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Chair, since the map is up, so Mr. Hood, the yellow shaded, is that the sphere boundary or the incorporated boundary? Because I'm assuming they're not one and the same for the city.
Yeah, let me take a look on my map.
No, I just can't read it on the black and white.
The sphere boundary, if you're looking at the yellow area that's down at the bottom of the map, is the same as the city limit line.
So what's up on the screen, the yellow is the city, is the incorporated city limits, not the
Right.
sphere.
It's the sphere as well.
They're both the same? They're coterminous?
Yes, they are.
In all places?
Well, we have the long cherry stem that's going out to the airport
Well, no,
as well.
don't get us going on that have lived in Goleta. But, I mean,
Is that what it's called, a charity stand?
Right.
But I mean, because the Museum of Natural History has got an application in process, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, that's an annexation request. Is it within the sphere?
It's in the sphere of influence,
It
yes.
is in the sphere, because I'm looking at Mission Canyon, which appears to be that gray area there, and I know that's all county area coming down, including even that housing you think would be in the city below Foothill, all the way down to the museum. Sorry, I guess I do need this after all. Did I have it? There we go. But it's not doing its thing.
Here. Want that?
Yeah, I mean, I see it, but then I don't see it over here. It's like it's, oh, wait a minute. Okay, no, that's yours, that's not mine.
If we turn the lights back off, that helps a little.
Where? I don't, yeah, okay, maybe right there. So this is, I think, Mission Canyon, and coming down, and that's not in the yellow. So I'm assuming that somewhere along in there is the line is right on the border with the Museum of Natural History, and that's why they're asking for an annexation.
Right, that's exactly right. So the sphere of influence is the broken dotted line.
That doesn't do us any good.
Right.
At least not me any
Well,
good. My eyes are not that good.
if you look at the yellow down on the bottom of the screen, the dotted line is the sphere of influence and the city limits.
Okay. Well, again, I think that, I mean, obviously, I don't have a problem with confirming what's already there, but I think where the incorporated city boundary and the sphere of influence boundaries differ is really important for us to have it highlighted, because those are the areas where we're most likely to see applications, or if they're outside of that, then we need to know that too. So it's kind of hard to know what we're reconfirming when it's not clear that the difference between the two boundaries, at least for me. And also, I think, it plays into the discussion when applications come forward for annexations that are just part of an area that's within a sphere, and it might be more likely to ask them to annex more, if it's already within their sphere and it makes for a more orderly boundary, which is what we're supposed to be about. Because I think that can be a legitimate request as well. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Severs?
Before I ask my question, we have a planning director here, Jennifer Farmer. Can you just let us know when the city of Toledo will be talking about this, because we haven't yet?
Good afternoon. As Commissioner Seves said, I'm Jennifer Carmen. I'm the planning director for the city of Goleta. We have 4 possible sphere of influence expansions identified in our general plan from 2006. Because we're supposed to review every 5 years, and it has been 5 years since the last review, we're presenting 2 to our city council for consideration to see if they would like to move forward on those. And then we're expecting to have that meeting in the second meeting of February. I don't know if we need to talk about them specifically, since we haven't done any analysis at this time. So.
I had one question dealing with LAFCO. Mr. Hood, you mentioned Southern Hills was now to be their sphere. Actually, it's going to be part of their incorporated city.
Right.
So is their sphere now coterminous with the property line, or is it going to be on that?
It would be coterminous with the Summit View Homes property in that area.
I just wanted to clarify.
It's already within the Mission Hills Community Services District sphere of influence.
Okay, any other?
Mr. Chair, if I could, 2 points. One, now that seems like we may be ratifying 6 of the 8 today, my question is the timeline, since we're not approving those spheres, even though nothing has come forward officially to us in that, what's the time frame for that activity to take place so that we can, at some point in time, say, yes, the spheres are appropriate and or the city limits are appropriate?
I have presented resolutions to you for adoption today for 6 of the 8 cities. And
Yeah, but
that would reaffirm the existing spheres of influence for those 6 cities.
Then what is the time frame for the other 2 to be certified or decertified or whatever? We, because we started this a few years ago, and
Right.
Mayor Dick DeWeese from Lompoc asked the question, who in Sacramento looks this over? And why are we wasting all this money?
Nobody looks it over in Sacramento.
Okay. That's all.
LAFCO is independent of the state and local agencies, the county and cities. But the remaining cities, I'm expecting that February we would come back with City of Carpinteria. I need to give notice if we're going to change the sphere of influence, and that requires 21 days notice. That's the reason I didn't put it on today.
Okay.
With the city of Goleta, it depends on when the city council comes back. We could reaffirm the existing sphere, or if there's some changes, I was thinking we would wait until if they're requesting changes, we'd look at those at that time, and the planning director said that may be in February for action by the city council.
Thank you, thank you. And Commissioner Farr made a comment about Santa Maria and Tanglewood and so forth, and yes, Tanglewood and all of Orcutt is basically within the sphere of City of Santa Maria and has been since 75 when the sphere of influence. And I'll just say that as the probable ultimate build-out of the community was the reason for that expanse, I'll say. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair. Thank you for that, Commissioner Orrick. I appreciate that clarification. I just wanted to say, since the planning manager for the city of Goleta is here, that about in 2009, I think it was, some areas of possible boundary changes for the city of Goleta came to LAFCO, and there were comments made about that, and including some of these same areas that might be proposed now. So I would just suggest that, might be good for the council to have that history in their packet when they discuss it. Thank you.
If there's no other questions, entertain a motion. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Aceves? Commissioner Farr? Commissioner Morehouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Orrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Welts?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Guyer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so we move on to information item number 1.
Chair Guyer, members of the commission, business item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the 2016 Cal LAFCO Annual Conference in Santa Barbara.
She needs her dart gun. Doesn't work.
Okay, business item 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer. I have a brief PowerPoint. I wasn't going to do a PowerPoint on this one, but I decided to go ahead and do one anyway. The 2016 Cal LAFCO Annual Conference is coming up, and we had a report from Pamela Miller last month at your meeting in Santa Maria about responsibilities of the host LAFCO and responsibilities of the planning committee. Planning committee did hold a conference call on December 15th, right before Christmas. Your executive officer and commissioners Morehouse and Welt serve on the program planning committee as well as the host committee. As a result of the conference call, a number of items were discussed. The most pressing was the need for a conference theme by the first week in January, so I thought that I would wait until this meeting, until we have a look at some of the themes that were suggested. The theme is critical because it sets the tone for the conference program. So we need to, if possible, today come up with a theme and have a discussion of what the theme would be. There's several possible themes that emerged from the conference planning committee, and I'll give you a list of those, but I was pretty impressed by the response from the planning committees, a number of people from around the state. But let me just throw some of these out, and I'll leave them all up on the screen. Land, air, sea, diversity and balance. And again, we're looking at Santa Barbara County. Orchards to oceans, strength in diversity. That was, I thought, a pretty good one as well. Building a platform, stability with organized change, and I think one of our commissioners came up with that. Pinot to peers, celebrating California's diversity. LAFCO's role in making California a great place to live and work. That's a good one. Glass half full, how LAFCO's balance competing interests to keep California great. LAFCO's balancing interest, kind of similar to the, except for the glass half full, making California great. Here we go, kind of a combination, glass half full, Pinot to peers. Building a platform for stability with organized change. I think I included that twice, but it was a good one. And again, the theme could tie into one of the primary goals of LAFCO. This is response from commissioners, preservation of prime ag land. Santa Barbara County has many examples of this, wine, flowers, strawberries, and so on. Oops, went back. And Pamela said, when I think of Santa Barbara, I think of diversity of your county. Your county is as diverse as any state in the state of California. Perhaps you could use the term diversity, diverse or diversity in the concept in that theme. This is from one of our commissioners, oceans, orchard to oceans, or ag to oceans, or California and limited potential for greatness. I think those are all of them, so I'll kind of go back to the previous page and just let you take a look at those and see if any of those seem to, or a combination of these themes, seem to strike a high note with the commissioners.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Yes.
Of all those, my own personal favorite choice would be appending or prefixing Pinot to peers, since the meeting is going to be in Santa Barbara or Santa Barbara County, that we prefix that Santa Barbara Pinot to peers, celebrating California's diversity. And that would insinuate strawberries and other vegetables and agricultural interests. My comments.
Mr. Chair, for those of us that like Chardonnay, I'm a little insulted that we're just not going to say Chardonnay and Pinot and Merlot and others.
Wine? How about wines?
Mr. Chair, just to add another one to the mix, I thought of waves of change, strength and diversity. I like the strength and diversity.
Okay, Commissioner Wolf?
Well, you know, when we sat here last meeting, I couldn't think of anything, and so to see all of these, I think they're all great, and there's a lot of creative minds. My personal favorite is orchards to oceans, because I think that covers, you know, just ag and not in general, but it's a little bit more, you know, more broad than just wine. But I liked what Supervisor Farr just said. Waves of change. Strength and diversity. Yeah, I think that's good too.
Okay, Commissioner Morehouse?
Yeah, I just had one more to add, and I do like the orchards to oceans, since I came up with it. And I'm a cab guy, so no on the Pinot. But I thought orchards to oceans, LAFCO balancing diversity would be one possibility. Actually, it says LAFCO's balancing California's diversity.
Okay. Commissioner Lavenio?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, as your first job as chair, you get to open the envelope, and the winner is.
No, thank you. Commissioner Wells, do you have anything?
I like them all, but Doreen's resonates with me. Waves of change is good. I like that one.
Yeah. Commissioner Stark.
May I ask a semi-ignorant question? Is the point of the conference scheme to highlight us as the host county and shed light on that, or to indicate what the conferees are going to be talking about?
I'll let Mr. Hood answer that.
Yeah, I think it's both. We want to set some parameters for the discussion based on the theme. And I think clearly there's going to be a lot of discussion about water and that kind of thing. So some of the issues that we have in Santa Barbara County not only are prevalent here, but around the state. So we want to set the tone for the local host LAFCO and county, but also celebrate, diversity and changes that will take place, around the state that are also taking place here in Santa Barbara.
So, what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a motion just to move things along. And like I said, I'm so open to all of these, but I'm going to make a motion. And this is based on what Mr. Morehouse said, that I move that it's orchards to oceans, balancing California's diversity.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, take a vote.
Commissioner Seves? Aye. Commissioner Farr? Commissioner Morehouse?
Aye.
Commissioner Orrick?
Aye.
Commissioner Welts?
Aye.
Commissioner Wolf?
Aye.
Chair Guyer?
Aye.
Motion passes.
So who's buying the Pinot or Chardonnay after the meeting today, huh?
Mr. Chairman, could I just finish up here? A couple of quick things. We've had the motion on the theme, and that was great. I really appreciate that. But we still have a couple of things that are lingering. One is the conference and logo for Santa Barbara LAFCO, mobile workshop, special events, and sponsorships. And I had in the staff report some items that came up of possible field trips, the desal plant, and something that Commissioner Morehouse brought up, the energy recycling facility and possible stops on a mobile workshop using water for ag uses. There was also a discussion about AB3 and interaction with state universities and state agencies and other different governance issues. AB8, property tax exchange, greenhouse gases, climate change, as some statewide issues, groundwater session, the SGMA issue, new districts, expanding powers, some legislation, and Commissioner Morehouse also brought up, is it Steve Nicolaitis, and the groundwater documentary that he was impressed with, that we may get a conference session going with that. And then when the drought ends, everything will be fine, question mark. Based on the last couple of days, it looks like it's working pretty well, but I don't think it's going to solve everything. And, what have we learned from drought for the past several years, and how have we adapted through diversity and through changing paradigm shifts to deal with that. So those are a couple of things I wanted to bring up. They're in the staff report, but I thought it'd be good just to mention those as well.
I might add one thing to that. The recycle water at GSD. For a tour. Okay. Anything else? And then we'll move on to information item 2. Or no, information item 1.
Chair Guyer, members of the Commission, informational item number 1 is to receive and file an update on the status of Santa Barbara County's application to initiate formation of the Isla Vista Community Service District as authorized by Assembly Bill 3.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a brief comment on this, or a brief staff report. It's an information item, so it's not an item for any kind of action. Business item would be that. On December 8th, 2015, the Board of Supervisors adopted a resolution of application to Santa Barbara LAFCO to initiate the formation of the Isla Vista Community Services District. I've included in the staff report a notice that was signed by your clerk that accepts the application. It's not a certificate of filing, but it has accepted the application as being filed. I've also included sections of AB3 that talk about the timeline, the 150 days following receipt of a resolution of application for LAFCO to look and review the application. What the bill says as far as services, about the election, majority vote, about the 2/3 utility user tax, and different items that are taken strictly from the bill. And when the election would take place, the November election. And there's a timeline that we're working with and trying to get that clearly to meet that deadline, that we would not go beyond that deadline date, which is July. So I will be scheduling future discussions of this. I've talked with legal counsel about some of the things that are your responsibility as far as determining services that would be provided, and the extent of the utility user tax between the 5% and 8% level, and doing an analysis based on the feasibility study, and also Auditor Bob Geiss's analysis that was submitted to the board on December 8th as well. So I'll be bringing that back after discussing this with legal counsel and getting some kind of a timeline to meet that deadline. And clearly I won't run up against that timeline. It would be well before the deadline for the election. But there are some decisions that your commission needs to make, and I'll be presenting those with my analysis at a future meeting.
I have one question of clarity on it. When you say 150 days, is 150 days from the day that the application is deemed complete, not the receipted?
No, I think it's from the time the application is received.
So roughly how long then does it take you to deem it complete?
Well, it really, it depends. We have to look at the application. I've worked with the CEO staff and the board on submitting the application. I have not issued a certificate of filing, mainly because the bill didn't become effective until January 1. Mm-hmm. So the submittal by the board was 3 weeks prior to that. So, here we are at January 7th, so we're only 6 days into the bill being.
So the 150 days has started.
Well, the language in the statute is actually a little ambiguous, because it says 150 days following receipt of a complete resolution of application. The county submitted it before the bill became effective. I don't think we're proposing to find it incomplete, but I think we would start the time clock not until the statute itself is in effect. So I think we would treat it as basically probably running from either January 1st or January 4th to give LAFCO the fair amount of time, I think, envisioned under the statute.
Okay. That's good. Yes. Commissioner Sebi.
Mr. Hood, could you spend a few minutes and educate me and maybe the board as to what is the process we go through as far as establishing the tax rates? I've never gone through it. I don't know any of the commissioners gone through it. But to give us a heads up,
It's an interesting question as far as the utility user tax, and we're breaking new ground here because there's no districts in the state that collect a utility user tax. We've been given a range of options between 5% and 8% on utilities, excluding the telecommunications utilities. I think it's very clear that a lot of it depends on the services that are authorized. There's latent powers that are implied by the bill that 61-100 of the government code sets out services that are allowed by CSDs. Those are not included in the initial range of services. So the feasibility analysis says that there's certain things that can be funded by the utility user tax. But it seems to me that, even at the 8% rate, they're not going to be sufficient to fund everything completely. So I know that the community is waiting to discuss prioritizing services, and hopefully within the next foreseeable future, they'll come back with, these are the services that we would like to see funded by the utility user tax. Additional services that would not be funded would still be on the books, but would need to find additional revenue sources. The parking district, again, is more or less an assessment district. It's not funded by the utility user tax, so that would require a separate election. And some of these are kind of confusing, and we are breaking new ground, as I said.
But here's my concern, is that we have a moving target. How are you going to analyze the moving target and still do it within the time frame that's given to us? Now, does the county's completed application spell out the services that are recommended that we can analyze? Or it's a moving target. What are we even looking at?
Right. Again, as I mentioned, it'd be nice if the community could come up with a list of priorities as far as services that they would like to see. The other thing that, obviously, the easiest approach is to approve the maximum amount of the utility user tax on all the services and let the board of directors decide when they're seated and when the utility user tax passes.
Can I ask a question? Yes. I mean, are we going to be setting up public hearings and taking public input as well as the commission acting on this solely on its own?
I expect that we'll have a series of meetings. We will have, if necessary, special meetings to decide on, the range of services and the financing. And definitely, I think that we're responding to an application that was filed as a result of legislation that was on the state level that is very different than the conventional CSDs that are initiated by application of registered voters, 25% of the registered voters, or by a resolution of application by an applicant, which would be an affected local agency. And in this case, the Board of Supervisors is the affected local agency, but they were given very little discretion about approving the resolution of application because it was legislative. So there's a lot of like you said, moving targets, and we'll try and nail it down as clearly as we can at the staff level and present the recommendations to the commission at public hearings.
Commissioner Morehouse.
So we have 150 days to make a recommendation on a 5 to 8% tax. I mean, that's kind of simplifying one of our major tasks here. However, we don't know we can't do a fiscal analysis of imposing a tax when we don't know what the services that are going to be provided are. There's a vast array of services that they're talking about that they could possibly fund with this tax. Knowing that, is this not an incomplete application because we have not been told what the services they're asking us to tax on?
I wouldn't say it's incomplete because as far as an application, it's complete. And we have some financial feasibility studies, one prepared by the proponents in the community through economic and planning systems, and that was submitted, and I've looked at it. The other has been submitted by County Auditor Bob Geis. As far as the application's completeness, they have, the board and the staff have completed an application to LAFCO that has everything that we require.
But we don't know what services are being asked for, so how can we impose a tax when we don't know what the services are being asked? I mean, it's that simple. It's economics 101, maybe below that.
As I mentioned, the simple approach would be to approve the 8% tax rate and all the services and let the board of directors of the district determine what they want to spend the money on after they're seated and if the utility user tax passes.
Mr. Parr? Do you have a question?
No, I just turned it on because that
makes it work. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Stark.
Yeah, I guess I have a bunch of questions which I got to ask at some later time. I understand that it's complicated and staff and council got to look at it. I understand what Commissioner Morehouse is saying, ordinarily wouldn't propose a tax without a plan and an oversight mechanism, et cetera. But we have to pick a number, right? Could we not pick a low number and a lot of different full range of services, the most we can, let the community district figure it out, and then put a tax measure on to raise the rate? Is that a feasible alternative?
I think these are things that we will be discussing in the future.
I think we're going to need to, am I not on?
No, you're not on. It sounds like my back.
Okay, let me try this again. I'll be right next to you.
Don't fall off the edge.
I see two issues here, and maybe we're going to need to have a special meeting just to discuss this, be on basis to what we're going to do, what we're going to analyze, because ultimately the services, we're going to eventually be, let's say everything goes through and the taxpayers approve whatever tax rate is, and they're now in operation. Now it's our responsibility to make sure that they're providing the services that's dictated in the service in the CSD. Is that not correct? So if in fact we're supposed to analyze if they're meeting their responsibilities, we have to know up front what they're being asked to do, and we have to know if they're financially able to complete them. But we're not going to be able to do that unless we know what the services they want to provide. And I think that 150 days can't start until we know that, because how can you do your job not knowing what the end goal is? So I think we need to have a special meeting, just not necessarily a special meeting, but let's agendize at our next meeting to be able to have the county come before us with they're the applicant, and let's see exactly what we're going to start analyzing. I think it's only fair to you, and it's only fair to the commission.
I think my only comment is that, whatever, if we have special meetings or we have regular meetings, we have 150 days to do our analysis. And, we don't want to miss the election deadline for the November election. So critical is the amount of utility user tax and the services that are going to be provided. If that comes from the community or from the county, I think somebody needs to come up with those services. And we need to choose from that array of 8 services which ones are top priority and which ones can be funded by the limited amount of funding that's available.
I'll make a comment, but I've got to kind of watch out with my comment. My assumption is that, from what I'm hearing you say, is the 150 days, as far as you're concerned, started January 1st. The second one is, I think the bill's fairly clear on what services it allowed. And so if we went forward with that, I think that we could probably start the financial analysis. I will leave it at that. Okay, any other comments?
Yeah, one more. Just to kind of follow up a little bit with what I previously said, I want to honor this, attempt to have this on the ballot, as quickly as was intended. But at the same time, I also still feel this is an incomplete application. And I think that if we go back and say, application's incomplete, please tell us the services that you're asking for, that would give us the ability to better analyze this and provide what we feel is the proper tax.
We have somebody from Williams' office. Do you want to come up and make a comment to it?
Did you have a specific question? Or?
The question is the services that are provided.
Good afternoon, Chair Geyer, fellow commissioners. So in response to the question about which, by the way, I'm Cameron Shunk. I'll be speaking on behalf of Assemblymember Williams. In response to the question of which services, I think you pointed out explicitly, Chair Geyer, that the list of services is delineated in AB3. We've also prepared and provided to you all a financial feasibility report that breaks down each of the anticipated costs for each of those services. It would be my impression, and I think the impression of a lot of folks, that throughout the course of these coming meetings, community members, et cetera, will be here to talk to you about services they find most important. And I believe it was our assumption and the intent of the bill that it would be your commission's determination to decide which services you thought were most initially important. Now, Commissioner Morehouse also brought up an interesting point of allowing all services to be authorized initially and then allowing the Board of Directors to decide which ones to fund. I think that that would also be fully acceptable because according to my interpretation of LAFCO law, your job as a commission would then be to analyze that district afterwards and see which of those services are being provided, leave those as active powers, and any services that are not being provided by the district would then be latent. That would be my understanding.
Okay, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Information item 2.
Chair Guyer and members of the Commission, informational item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the current Santa Barbara LAFCO applications.
Mr. Chair, this is simply a list of applications that have been filed with you, with us, but have not been set for hearing at this point. And I can go through them briefly if you'd like. One of them is the reorganization involving the Santa Rita Hills CSD and formation of the Santa Rita Hills Bridge and Highway District. That application is inactive, and because it is not complete. And so there is a guideline in your commissioner policies that if an application is inactive for a period of time, 180 days, that it's deemed to be withdrawn or not continued on the list. So it's my intention to send out that notice, and based on the last discussions that we had that required the indemnification agreement to be filed, which has not happened since at least September, so they're probably at least halfway through that 180-day period. Museum of Natural History.
I have a question on that first one, though. But the dissolution's already, that's active.
It is active, but it's not part of the reorganization. But
Right.
we will know, and I was going to mention that in my comments, that there is a protest hearing scheduled on January 14th in the city of Lompoc City Council chambers to accept written protests on dissolution of the Santa Rita Hills CSD. And so we'll determine if it's going to be dissolved or not based on those protests. 50% or more protest of the landowners, that is 50% of the assessed value, would terminate the dissolution.
Okay.
So we'll wait and see what happens.
The dissolution is it part of 15-1 or not? It's separate from it, isn't it?
It is.
Yes. Okay.
It's a separate application.
Right.
The dissolution was an application that your commission filed. The Museum of Natural History annexation is pending several initial changes. It's really not a reorganization because there are detachments from various county districts. So there is a necessity for a property tax exchange between the city and the county that could delay this consideration for a period of time. Hopefully not as long as Summit View Homes, but it could be delayed based on property tax exchange and detaching county districts from the annexation area. The Bradley Village Key Site 20 has been pretty much, we have report back, so we are probably going to have this at the February meeting. It's a subdivision in North County off Bradley Road in the Orcutt community. And it would would anticipate 69 single-family homes. This is an annexation to the CSA 5 and the North County Lighting District. And as you know, the recent file formation of the IVCSD is also a submitted application. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any question from any commissioners? I have one question. On 15-5, there are some districts, you know, the districts that are involved with that one?
I do. I don't have the list, but it's the Mosquito Abatement District. It's the CSA 30, 31, 32. Some other some other special districts. I don't have the list. They're minimum taxes, but they are affected. I think there's 5 or 6 districts, county districts, that need to be detached.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to Commissioner and staff announcements. Jeffrey. Yes. Commissioner Morales.
Oh, this is not as much of an announcement as a congratulations. I just, in light of the talks that we've had about UCSB and such, I just wanted to say congratulations to my son, Jeffrey, who graduated, took his last final in December, and he's an economics graduate of UCSB, and it took him 3.5 years. So. And he will be doing like most other UCSB students that graduate. He got a job and he's moving away.
Okay. Executive officer comments.
Mr. Chair, I mentioned the protest hearing, but there's also a special district selection committee meeting on January 25th. We have 2 special district representatives on LAFCO, Commissioner Geyer and Commissioner Fox, that their terms end in March 1st. So I'll be conducting that election. Nomination period closes on January 15th. And I mentioned protest hearing on the lapse proposal policy. So those are the only things I had to mention today.
Okay, with that, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.